somewhere beneath Moscow's glittering skyline, the walls are starting to tremble, not from bombs, but from something far quieter. An economy that is running out of breath. For years, Vladimir Putin built his empire on oil, obedience, and the illusion that Russia could survive anything. Sanctions, isolation, even war. Yet today, the machine that once powered his rule is seizing up from within. The ruble has lost its footing. Inflation is tearing through everyday life, and even the country's richest allies are backing away. Inside the Kremlin, officials whisper of numbers they can no longer control. Growth has stalled, industries are shrinking, and the nation's wealth is draining faster than it can be replaced. The fortress Putin promised is starting to look like a prison collapsing on itself. And if the empire's strength was always built on illusion, what happens now that the illusion is gone? Deep in Moscow's financial district, the glowing screens that once tracked the ruble's strength now flash red. The engine that powered every Kremlin promise, built on cash, currency, and credit, is beginning to seize. On paper, the story looks calm. Rosstat claims the economy grew 4.3% in 2024, and even the IMF projects slight gains. But beneath those official lines, the current is shifting. The ruble is weakening again, and the cost of keeping it alive grows heavier each week. Factories complain that imported parts have vanished or doubled in price. Shelves in provincial cities fill with substitutes, while wages lose value faster than they're paid. Inflation, already in double digits in 2023, keeps eroding what's left of ordinary savings. The central bank has lifted interest rates again, but higher rates only slow what little business remains. And the state's main source of oxygen, which is oil and gas, is no longer enough to breathe. Exports to Western buyers have collapsed from more than half of total trade to roughly 10% by late 2024. Most payments now arrive in rupees, yuan, or promises, currencies that cannot replace the dollars Moscow needs to buy technology and pay its debts. And to fill the gaps, the Kremlin is dipping into its national wealth fund. Each withdrawal keeps the lights on for another month, but the reserve is shrinking faster than it can be rebuilt. And inside ministries, the conversation has shifted from growth targets to triage. Corporate executives speak in quieter tones too. Nearly a quarter of manufacturers say their loan payments swallow most of their profits. Projects are stalled, investments postponed, machines left idle because spare parts never arrived. It is the sound of an economy suffocating slowly, still moving, but only because it hasn't yet realized it has stopped breathing. And if this is what collapse looks like before the next shock hits, what happens when war spending turns that slow suffocation into free fall? The free fall has already begun. The moment war became Russia's main industry, the slow suffocation of its economy turned into collapse. What once drained resources now devours them entirely. When Putin sent troops into Ukraine, the state began rewriting its budget in real time. Spending once meant for schools and hospitals now fuels artillery and ammunition. By the start of 2025, defense spending reached 15.5 trillion rubles, about 7% of the country's GDP, the highest share in modern history. Some estimates suggest that over 37% of total government expenditures now go directly to the military or internal security forces. The real figure may be even higher. Many costs are hidden inside the economic development or industrial modernization lines that serve as camouflage for weapons production. And what cannot be hidden is the investment in the future that has vanished. Education funding has been cut, regional healthcare projects frozen, civil infrastructure left unfinished as the state channels everything toward the front. The numbers reveal a truth the Kremlin avoids saying aloud. Energy revenues fell about 5% in 2024, with oil exports dropping more than 2% from the year before. The empire that once ran on oil is losing the fuel that sustained it. So Moscow turns inward. It borrows, prints, and seizes. The draft budget for 2025 allocates over 43% of total spending to defense and security programs. Private companies face new taxes and quiet nationalizations. Profits vanish into state accounts labeled strategic reserves, a phrase that has become code for the war effort itself. Even that is not enough. Ukraine's long-range drone strikes have hit refineries far beyond the front lines. Analysts estimate that nearly 40% of Russia's refining capacity has been disrupted or destroyed. Fuel shortages are spreading, and export margins are collapsing. Every strike is not just a tactical hit, but a direct blow to the treasury that keeps the war alive. Inside government offices, officials speak carefully. The phrase economic adjustment replaces crisis. Budgets are rewritten again and again. But the gap always widens. The country is spending faster than it can earn, and each new tank or missile comes at the expense of tomorrow's bread. What started as a war of conquest has become a war of hunger. The economy once powered the conflict, but now the conflict is devouring the economy. And if the last thing holding the system together is the very war tearing it apart, what happens when the fighting stops? When the fighting finally stops, what will remain is not peace, but emptiness, because the war has already drained the lifeblood of Russia's economy and its people. Since the invasion began, more than 820,000 Russians have fled the country, according to independent demographers, many of them young professionals, engineers, and IT workers. The government denies the figure, but its own labor ministry admits the shortage of 11 million workers who will be missing from the economy by 2030. Factories in the Urals and Volga regions are running short on workers, and construction sites now depend on migrant labor brought from Central Asia under emergency permits. While hospitals in provincial cities operate with skeleton crews, and even the military supply chain leans on older, undertrained recruits because the younger generation is gone. And wages for those who remain are rising on paper, but not in life because inflation devours every ruble gained. For many families, the war's only reward is poverty. Industrial towns, once built around steady work, are turning into shells of what they were, where streetlights flicker, schools close, and the best minds have already vanished abroad. This is the silence after the battle, a nation winning territory, but losing its future. And if the factories run empty and the youth have fled, who will be left to rebuild when the guns finally fall quiet? Certainly not the youth who have already fled, not the factories whose workers have vanished, and not a state whose population is bleeding dry, as Russia now moves toward a future where decline is not a possibility but a certainty written into its foundation. Demographers project that by 2045, Russia's population could fall from about 146 million to around 138.8 million, or even further under pessimistic scenarios. The fertility rate remains well below replacement, hovering near 1.41 children per woman in 2024. And deaths continue to outnumber births. Inside the country, many industrial leaders are quietly cutting shifts, furloughing workers, and slowing production as domestic demand weakens and global isolation deepens. Economists now see long-term growth hovering around 1.5% or less, far from the rebound Putin once promised. And analysts warn that the wartime boom has already burned out, leaving behind damaged industries and shrinking investment. Even the energy sector, the pillar of every Kremlin budget, is losing its shield. Global demand is shifting, sanctions continue to bite, and refineries damaged by war remain offline. Russia can still sell oil, but no longer at the price or volume that once defined its power. Beyond its borders, the consequences ripple outward. Gas markets, commodity prices, and regional stability all depend on whether Moscow's unraveling accelerates or steadies. For decades, Russia believed the world needed its energy, its metals, its might. Yet now, the world faces a different question, one that may define the next decade. Not how Russia will endure its fall, but how much of the world will fall with it.